I'm so sorry, this is terrible news, obviously.
Look at the stars. The great kings of the past look down on us from those stars.
The memories will be so thick, they'll have to brush them away from their faces. I am your father. I have one thing to say to people like you.
I like Star Wars, too.
I'm a stutterer. I didn't talk from the age of 8 to 14, or actually 6 to 14. And I rediscovered the power of speech, and then they couldn't shut me up.
James Earl Jones, the legendary actor of the stage and screen, has died.
Oh, honey, if you think James Earl Jones's voice was the only thing legendary about him...
And the rockets, red glare, the bombs bursting in air.
Then buckle up. This story is going to take you on a wild ride through Hollywood.
Hey, look, man, I ain't fighting for no race. I ain't redeeming nobody. My mama told me Mr. Lincoln done that. Ain't that why you shot him?
Family feuds, triumphs, heartbreaks, and a whole lot of tea. Let's take it back to the beginning. Born on January 17th, 1931 in Arkabutla, Mississippi.
Born in Mississippi, raised in Michigan, who stutters. And that's the voice, and that's me. I lucked out.
Sounds fancy, right? Little James didn't have the glamorous start you'd imagine. His daddy, Robert Earl Jones, a boxer and actor, dipped before James even had a chance to say bye. So James was raised by his grandparents on a farm in Michigan. And honey, let's just say that childhood was rough.
Remembering things of my childhood, all little things like they would ordinarily sort of pass your memory. But I get on a treadmill sometimes and I can't sleep, and you just you start going back into the past. You know? I mean really little things like eating clay, digging into the banks and the river bank of Mississippi and finding where the clay is pure and putting salt on it, eating it, eating shamrock with salt again.
To add a little extra drama, he had a horrible stutter. Yes, this man who became known for his smooth, deep voice couldn't even talk properly until later in life.
I'm a stutterer. I didn't talk from the age of 8 to 14, or actually 6 to 14. And I rediscovered the power of speech, and then they couldn't shut me up.
Can you imagine? Little James was mute for years. Yes, years. Can you believe this iconic voice didn't speak until he was practically a teenager? The boy was so nervous he wouldn't say a word.
Silence isn't bad. It's good to listen, and I learned to listen.
But it wasn't until a high school teacher stepped in, praised the teachers, and encouraged him to recite poetry that James finally found his voice. Slowly but surely, he came out of his shell, and the world was never the same after that.
You have this incredible voice, which people actually, and it's famous. You have one of the most famous voices in the world, when you think about it.
Well, sometimes it doesn't work because I'm a stutterer, and I'm happy that anything comes out at all just with clarity.
Fast forward a bit, James heads off to the University of Michigan. Now, at first, he thought he'd be saving lives as a doctor. But as fate would have it, the theater bug bit him, and soon he was all about the stage life. You know, there's always that moment when you realize your true calling, and for James, it was performing in front of people, captivating them with his powerful presence.
Don't you try and go through life worried if somebody like you or not.
Let's be real, the man could act, and it didn't take long for him to break into Broadway. In 1964, he hit the big leagues with a performance in The Blacks. But it was his role in The Great White Hope in 1969.
Look, what I supposed to do? Dash her in an itty-bitty hole someplace in town and go sneaking up there at night?
That officially put him on the map. He played a boxer named Jack Jefferson, a role so iconic, it earned him a Tony Award and even an Oscar nomination. Girl, James was living that A-list life. He was right up there with the big boys. But if you think he peaked there, hold on to your wigs. It was 1977, and along came this little sci-fi flick called Star Wars.
Come on, now tear this ship apart until you found those plans and bring me the passengers. I want them alive.
Ever heard of it? George Lucas tapped James to be the voice of Darth Vader. No, he wasn't in the suit. Leave that drama for later. But honey, when he said,
I am your father,
the world felt it. His booming voice gave Darth Vader the gravitas we all love to hate.
When I first saw the dialogue that said, Luke, I am your father, I said to myself, he's lying. I wonder how they're going to play that lie out.
Can you believe he made only $7,000 for his role in Star Wars as Darth Vader?
Paid me $7,000, and I thought that was good money.
And let's be real, without James's voice, Darth wouldn't have been half as scary.
And Kirshner gave me a soundtrack with him doing the voice of Darth Vader. Kirshner's voice is like this, and I'm imitating him badly, but it was scary as hell. Kirshner was scarier than I could ever be.
That movie was all about the voice.
Obi-Wan is here. The Force is with him.
But here's the real tea. Did you know James wasn't even credited for voicing Vader in the first film? Yes, sis, uncredited. Like, how dare they? There was definitely some shade thrown on that set, but being the classy man he was, James just went with it. For a while, at least. While James was busy conquering the entertainment world, things back home were a hot mess. His relationship with his daddy, Robert Earl Jones, was estranged for a long time. Robert had bounced on the family when James was just a baby, and that left some serious emotional scars. It wasn't until later in life that James and his dad finally reconciled. Turns out, Robert also ended up in the acting biz. Like father, like son, right?
You ain't marrying no damn white woman. You are sticking to your own kind.
But let's not sugarcoat it. Family drama aside, James was living the Hollywood dream. He married actress Cecilia Hart in 1982, and they had a son, Flynn. Now, their marriage was solid for decades.
Why did you marry Jim? But first, do you know what Jim means by the uptightness of black women?
Oh, yes.
You've been in the theater.
Well, I've felt it. I've sensed it with almost every black woman that we know, whether they accept me or not. Whether there's always a tolerance, but there's always hostility behind it.
But tragedy struck in 2016 when Cecilia passed away from ovarian cancer. Losing the love of his life was hard on James, but he carried on, ever the professional. They had been together for over 30 years, so that hit him deep. Let's spill some behind-the-scenes tea, shall we? Now, James might have been a gentleman on the outside, but there was some shade thrown here and there throughout his career. While working on Star Wars, there was a bit of tension between him and David Prowse, the man behind the Vader mask. See, Prowse wanted to be the voice and the body of Darth. But honey, once George Lucas heard that voice, it was a wrap. James was the chosen one.
I remember the second, when George had a chance to counsel me, he said, we don't know what we did right, so let's just try what we did. And naturally, I wanted to make Darth Vader more interesting, more subtle, more psychologically oriented, and so he said, no. What we're finding out is you got to keep his voice on a very narrow band of inflection, because he ain't human, really.
But that didn't stop a little beef from brewing. Apparently, Prowse was salty for years, feeling like James stole some of his thunder.
The voice, of course, you don't provide. Do you find it frustrating as an actor not to be performing vocally?
Yes, terribly. I performed all the way through the picture.
Start tearing this ship apart piece by piece until you find those tapes. Find the passengers of this vessel. I want them alive.
Because I have to learn all the dialogue, and the other actors in the film have to react to me and things like this.
But then they redub.
But then they redub. I think the problem was, as you obviously realise, I have a West Country accent.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
very slight, very slight. And I don't think they could do Darth Vader with an English accent. That was the big problem. And also, you see, the character being a big black character that he is, I think George really wanted an obvious black voice, and they got James Earl Jones in to do it. And to me, that is a very obvious Negro voice.
Hollywood drama. James also had some quiet disagreements with networks over the years. He wasn't the kind of guy to air his dirty laundry in public, but insiders whispered that he was not always thrilled with how his projects were marketed. He was all about the craft, and sometimes the Hollywood machine didn't line up with his ideals. Okay, let's talk about Mufasa.
One day, Simba, the sun will set on my time here and will rise with you as the new king.
In 1994, Disney called up James and said, "We need you to voice a lion." And of course, James was like, "Say less." His role as Mufasa in The Lion King became the father figure of a generation. Can you even picture anyone else telling Simba to
remember who you are? You are my
true king.
No, honey, that's pure Jones magic right there. And let's not forget his work on Broadway. The man owned the stage. From Shakespeare
Thou shun a bear, but if thy flight lay toward the roaring sea, thou'st meet to bury the teeth.
to modern classics.
When I did speak of some distressful stroke, my youth suffered, my story being done.
James dominated. He snagged 2 Tony Awards and countless nominations. The man was a true thespian, always keeping it real on stage while his Hollywood peers were busy chasing blockbusters. And while James ruled the Pride Lands as Mufasa, he was also busy being royalty on screen in Eddie Murphy's iconic comedy Coming to America in 1988. Remember King Jaffe Joffer of Zamunda?
The wedding will proceed in 40 days. You may go home now. Good night.
That was James. The man had range, going from regal lions to fictional African kings. And honey, he owned every second of it. Coming to America was a smash hit, and it only cemented his reputation as one of the most versatile actors out there. Fans ate up his magical portrayal of King Jaffe, and he later reprised his iconic role in the long-awaited sequel Coming to America in 2021. Even at his age, he still had it, honey. Now, the final chapter of James Earl Jones's life wasn't without its challenges. After his wife Cecilia passed, James slowed down a bit. But let's be clear, even in his late 80s and early 90s, he was still working. In fact, in 2019, he reprised his role as Mufasa for Disney's live-action Lion King remake. Because, who else could do it? Health issues began to catch up with him, though. Rumors swirled about him dealing with diabetes and other health complications. But James, ever the private man, kept most of it low-key. He did a few voiceover gigs and small projects, but by 2022, he had mostly retired from the spotlight. Still, his voice remained a presence, one that could command a room even without him being there. In the summer of 2024, tragedy struck the entertainment world. On September 9th, 2024, James Earl Jones passed away peacefully in his New York home. He was 93 years old. The outpouring of love and tributes from fans and celebrities was overwhelming. Hollywood lost a legend, and people across the world mourned the loss of that iconic voice that had been a part of their lives for so many years. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated to be around $45 million. Not bad for a kid who once couldn't even speak, huh?